amazing way. And Ivy Petzinger, who's going to moderate today, we were just talking before, had applied to the Peace Corps. She'll tell her story. But Ivy, you had never been overseas before our trip to Tanzania, right?
Nope.
And then applies to the Peace Corps and gets assigned to live in Tanzania.
And I applied anywhere, no specific requests. I had never been abroad, and it was before my trip to Tanzania. So Peace Corps did not know I was heading to Tanzania, but I guess the universe wanted me in Tanzania again.
So that was, and then Ivy, as she'll mention, just did Peace Corps and got evacuated out, like a number of folks. So this session today, and thank you all for joining, and I know we're letting people in. I know there's some folks in Tanzania. I think they may have heard about this through the U.S. Embassy there. It turns out that Kim Stolo, who is the new public affairs person there, is a graduate of CASE, which is awesome. So she was nice enough to share this with some folks in Tanzania. So all sorts of nice connectivity. So I am going to turn it over to Ivy, who is going to moderate the discussion with Benji and Bernice. But for those who have not been on these before, these are really interactive, lots of chances to chat and ask questions. Benji and Bernice are great friends, awesome entrepreneurs, and we thought today would be a really nice way for certainly our community of folks in the US or sort of outside of Tanzania to get a taste of sort of what's happening on the ground with Tanzania, with entrepreneurs and the impact of COVID, but we can have a broader conversation as well. So with that, let me turn it over to Ivy. And Benji and Bernice, thank you for doing this. It's awesome to see you.
Good morning, everyone. As we say in Swahili, karibuni, or welcome. Welcome to the phone call. Thank you for being here. And particularly, thank you, Benji and Bernice, for being here. We're looking forward to learning more about Tanzania and how COVID is impacting Tanzania in general, startups, entrepreneurs there. Like Michael Goldberg, Professor Goldberg said, I was just in Tanzania for the Peace Corps. Before that, I was at CASE, studied chemical engineering for my undergrad. And yeah, so I applied to the Peace Corps right before our trip to Tanzania, my senior year of undergrad, and then got randomly assigned to Tanzania, which was great. I taught mathematics there at a secondary school, like a high school, in a pretty rural village. And all of Peace Corps was evacuated in March due to COVID, which we did get out of Tanzania before airfare was shut down, I believe. We'll learn more, I guess, from Bernice. But yeah, I guess with that, Benji and Bernice, if each of you would like to introduce yourselves, that would be great. And then we can dive into the discussion.
Cool. Bernice, you want to get started?
Sure. Thank you so much, Ivy, for the wonderful welcome, and Professor Goldberg and Professor Lax and everybody. It's good to see you. So yeah, I'm Bernice Fernandes. I hosted, the trip, partnered with my brother and our professors here. It was a wonderful trip. For me, I work in consulting. I have a business called Accelerate. We do management consulting. We do trainings for businesses and for startups here in Tanzania. And yeah, that's what I do. And I'm really involved in community work and in our church. But I'll talk more about that later when Ivy ask the next question. So that's just a little bit about me. I studied in the US. I got my MBA in the US. I worked in the US. I was in the US for almost 8 years before moving back to Tanzania. And so I'm happy to be here, my calling, and I believe that to whom much is given, much is required. And that's why I'm here in Tanzania. Thank you.
Awesome. What's up, everybody? Benjamin Fernandes here. I am also in Dar es Salaam right now. And a little bit about me. So I'm Tanzanian. I grew up here. I moved to the United States for university. Then I moved back. I had a career in media. And then I moved, the joke I tell my friends is when you don't know what to do with your life, you go to grad school. So went to grad school, and that's how I actually met Professor Goldberg through my professor that he mentioned earlier on the call. But for those who joined later, that's how we all got connected. And then, yeah, so right now I work in financial services and payments. So run a fintech company in Tanzania and Uganda. So we enable people to make payments. We consolidate multiple mobile money accounts and enable people to make payments just much faster, simpler, and more conveniently. A comparison in the US is, think of Venmo times mint.com for consumers. So that's what we built. We've got a team that's been growing, a nice user base that's been growing in both countries. But yeah, I am sure we'll dive into some more details after.
All right. Thank you for your introductions, for who you are, your background, and what kind of work you do now in Tanzania. I think maybe a good starting place could be to share how generally COVID has affected things in Tanzania. And then after that, maybe talking about some of the work that y'all have been doing in response to that, and maybe responses by the government and Tanzania in general. But if we want to start with just the impacts of COVID on Tanzania in general, I think that would be great to hear. And also, anyone, if you do have any questions, feel free to ask in the chat or kind of raise your hand, just jump in. But yes, Benji, Bernice.
Oh, sounds good, thank you. So in general, with COVID in Tanzania, COVID reached Tanzania in mid-March, and you know, it was a bit surprising when it happened. I think for Americans, a lot of Americans left immediately within the first week. For here, Tanzania, immediately as soon as COVID arrived, the schools were shut down. Schools and universities, that was the immediate action. However, we have never had a lockdown to date. We've never been locked down. We've been doing business as usual. However, there have been some restrictions. So gatherings are not permitted because it's high risk. However, religious areas are definitely permitted. Mosques and churches is, our president says those are places that have to be open. So they've been open ever since Corona came. Actually, the very first person who brought Corona to Tanzania was somebody in Belgium, a Tanzanian who was in Belgium. She was living with people in Belgium who had Corona, and she came back and she brought Corona to Tanzania, and then other people started bringing Corona. And so then the government, the week after Easter, they asked everybody to wear masks if you're going out to the market or anywhere that has a lot of people. So since then, that's how Corona has been. And then restaurants were closed, but now they've opened up. And now the latest change is, as of June 1st, airspace is opening up. Universities are opening up. Grade 12 is opening up. Schools not yet, just grade 12 to do their national exams. Tourism is opening up, and sports is opening up as of June 1st. We've had about, I mean, Benji, you can correct me, but we've had about 508 cases as of the end of April. We haven't had any other case updates this whole month of May. So we don't really know. All we know is that the cases have reduced. I'm not sure exactly how many cases, but so the mandate is life must continue. We're continuing on. And it's kind of like we're treating Corona as another disease, like, malaria or typhoid or something. It's there. You just need to protect yourself, but business and life must go on. That's why sports and all the travel and tourism and universities are opening up on June 1st. Benji can share more on his thoughts.
Yep. Yeah. So, I mean, I think initially it was, folks were like panicking as the global markets were really concerned about where COVID what would happen in Tanzania or other countries around the world. But the challenge we've been facing is, well, not really a challenge. I've got to be careful how I describe it. But yeah, we haven't had any case updates since April 29th. And I think that's the thing that most people don't know and everybody's confused about. So government's not shared any updates since April 29th about number of cases, number of tests. We've never been told how many people were tested since the beginning. So even though there is 508 people, nobody knows out of how many tests given. We do see signs of other things. So for example, Zambia had closed their border with Tanzania. So Tanzania has the most borders, I believe, compared to any other African country. We have 8 borders, and we deliver cargo. So people use our ports, and then they deliver goods to all those markets, right? So it's really important for us to have our borders open so we can trade with other markets nearby, whether it's food items, agricultural items, and so on. So for example, some of the bordering cities, like in Zambia, the bordering city had the most cases, and primarily from Tanzanian truck drivers. So Zambia had closed off their border with Tanzania. Kenya also closed off Tanzania and said, okay, no truck drivers in or out, because the border cities were the ones that were infected the most compared to any other city within the country. So that was interesting to watch because in Tanzania, we don't have many like big updates, but people were starting to seem like, okay, if these drivers are driving from Dar es Salaam all the way to the border, one, how many people are there, or maybe are they affecting on the way there? And then, at the border, like, okay, if they're coming from Dar, how many people are actually affected in Dar or not? So there's all questions that we have, with no big answers. The recent sentiment over the past week has been somewhat, interesting. Essentially, like a lot of people are saying, okay, it's just going to be there, as Bernice mentioned. Probably some aspect of herd immunity is the direction we're going in. Like, okay, cool, like life needs to go on. We need businesses to trade. The economy needs to keep functioning. I've heard other pieces, people saying death rates are so low, so people need to keep moving on. So we shouldn't just stop life for this. So it has been unfortunate, but like in some neighborhoods that maybe 2 weeks ago you'd go and you'd see masks everywhere. Like yesterday, you'd see no masks at all. So it is kind of concerning, but even Bernice and I have to be careful with what we say publicly because we don't want to say anything anti-government or anything like that.
Great, thank you for sharing. That definitely gives some perspective on how COVID is affecting things in Tanzania generally. Now, if maybe Benji, you want to start? I'm curious how COVID is affecting small businesses and entrepreneurs in Tanzania. And maybe you can start personally with Nala, and then Bernice, you with your consulting and entrepreneurship, and then other entrepreneurs and small businesses in Dar es Salaam and bigger cities.
Right. I think the biggest struggle, I think maybe that most companies, not even just in Tanzania, probably had was, I think working from home is a privilege. I think being able to watch Netflix is a privilege. Spending time on TikTok is a privilege that most people in the world can't afford. And so recognizing that privilege is probably the first step that we and our team had to do, was like, okay, can we afford to work from home or can we not? And because we could, like, that's a massive privilege that millions of people can't afford. See, in Tanzania, for example, 76% of the economy is informal and need daily income to survive. And so a lockdown was not possible. So, I mean, it was too expensive for the government to afford. And so that's why we didn't go under lockdown. And I think that's the approach many African countries are taking, because the countries that did try to go on lockdown early on, obviously, locking people in, they can't get income, and they can't get food. There's a massive frustration that gets built up from there. And there was a lot of photos circulating on the internet, like where maybe somebody's just trying to sell like wheat or rice, and they're told to go home, and that's their income maybe for their neighborhood that they're trying to bring in. So it's hard. I guess there was an aspect of privilege by not having a lockdown, but it also caused probably a lot more people to be infected. And we don't actually know the true numbers around that to date. Regarding us as Nala, obviously the privilege piece, we could afford to work from home. So I closed down our office. Ivy's been to our office, so she's seen it. but we had to close down our office and told everybody to go home. And we did this probably like the week after Ivy left. So really, really early on when COVID was just starting up, because I think there was also some aspect of pressure that people are like, okay, how are employees going to get treated when COVID-19 starts to spread? So, we wanted to just like, hey, give our folks on our team the optionality. However, that transition was really hard. I think culturally there's pieces and elements that come into play that we need to be respectful of. So, for example, when somebody is working from their house, you're kind of entering their personal space and their family space. And so with a lot of Tanzanian cultures, working from home is not really a thing. And maybe in the US as well, but like over here, there's an expectancy. If you're at home, you have to help out at home. You have to help out, whether it's, cleaning the yard outside or in the kitchen or whatever it is, you have to help out at home. And I think that was a hard balance for some of our teammates to transition to, because their parents would like say, all right, you're going to cook today. And they're like, no, but I have a meeting and a team call this evening. And they're like, no, you're cooking. And so like, it was definitely a tough transition for quite a few people. And when I as like the boss jump in, like I had to be respectful, so not to like jump in and like get there's a lot of cultural sensitivity there. Regarding small businesses, I think many have struggled significantly. I think globally as well, but it's hard. Like you feel for the small business because I think they get hit the most compared to your large like retailers or corporates.
Thank you. And Bernice, do you have anything to share or add on to that?
So along definitely with what Benji has said, it is definitely a transition. I remember when Corona first hit, I had a couple American clients that we just couldn't go on anymore. They had to move back to the US. It was just like, hey, we can't start because we're moving to the US. So when Trump had declared a state of level 4 emergency or something, within 48 hours, they had to leave. So that was one thing. Another thing is the other clients that I was working with training and consulting, they wanted to continue meeting in person and doing sessions with our team. And I had to say, no, we are completely transitioning online. And that was kind of like shocking. Like, I'm putting fear in them, but it was just like, no, because of the precautions, and they weren't used to that. But it was definitely a transition for them getting to adjust to learning online, because I feel like people learn better in person when there's more interaction, when there's more cases that we can work together. But we've definitely adjusted towards working online, but it does require concentration and people motivated to do it. Regarding, working from home definitely is a transition, because you have to manage your time, you have to manage other people on your team. As Benji said, people have things to do, or people are running errands or emergencies for their families. And so it's definitely understanding that and giving people a proper deadline. Things aren't going to be as fast. So you have to learn a lot of patience during this time. So learning a lot of online tools and managing with projects, that has been the transition. As for small businesses are, some of them are running out of money. Some of them have had to say, like, we're not getting business anymore, so we're struggling. I've had some of my clients say, hey, we're stranded. Some of my clients have told me, we're stranded, we don't know what to do, and so what I've been suggesting to them is work on your back office, build your back office, do the admin work, the work that you've put aside to. So they've been more working on that, but I think financially it's been hard, especially even for youth. There's not a lot of funding support or a cushion for them to fall back on. So a lot of people have either had to cut a lot of costs or cut team members, or people have completely pivoted their businesses, completely gone to do other types of businesses because it's kind of a hustle right now. And there's not much support locally. Yes, there are grants that people are trying to apply for, like globally, but locally there's not much of that ease for people. So youth are stranded, and it's also something they feel ashamed to speak about. It's shameful to speak about, hey, I'm an entrepreneur and I'm struggling, but you realize you're not the only one who's struggling. And I think talking about it helps, because then you can share more resources with each other.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. One question I have now, and then I'll definitely open it up. I don't know, I haven't seen any questions yet, but again, please feel free to jump in, ask any questions. But so when I was in Peace Corps, I did not live in Dar es Salaam or even a city where there were many businesses, or like you said, the privilege to work from home. There was no electricity. People didn't even have smartphones. So a lot of people worked agriculturally, and then I worked with students in school. But I noticed a lot of the youth would move to a city and maybe work in a shop or like a hotellini, like a food place or something like that. I am curious if you can speak to like how COVID is affecting more of these rural villages. And I don't know, the trickle down maybe, because like I said, not a lot of electricity or entrepreneurial like in the village, but a lot of the youth or parts of the population do go live in cities and maybe make money for their family. So I'm curious just how like outside of the cities and people in bigger, more developed areas, how rural areas are being affected by COVID as well.
Yeah, I'll dive in there. I'm actually going to pass this on to Bernice because she has like a little bit more experience than I do here. Essentially, there are challenges. So, you know, in most developing countries, you have something called primate cities, right? Primate cities are cities where a lot of the population migrate to and then try to earn money and send that money back home to support those communities. And that's the same thing in Tanzania. So Dar es Salaam is not the political capital, it's the economic capital. So most people migrate to Dar es Salaam with this hope of finding a lot of wealth, and then, or like more wealth than they were earning like in the village, and then trying to send money home to support their families and communities back there. So that is challenging. So for example, at the Nala office, we had, you know, a guy who was like helping us out at like, you know, taking care of like gardening and so on. And we were like compensating him. And obviously when we're closing the office, his first question is like, okay, so how are my cousins and my mom going to survive? And, you know, one thing that we're doing as an office is we're still paying him, even though he's not doing any work, but most people can't afford to do that or support other people that way. And so that's just one tiny example, but that affects millions and millions of people. You know, Bernice has been doing this pretty cool project. I think they've delivered over like 5,000 masks. So Bernice has been working on making masks and trying to deliver it in low income areas in Dar es Salaam. And they've delivered about 5,000 masks in total, probably more right now. And they're going into these smaller communities or slum-like areas within Dar es Salaam and giving these masks out for free and trying to teach people about the importance of wearing masks. And, you know, hopefully that trickles down to them telling maybe their folks or their friends, you know, far away, you know, because 76% of the population is also in the rural regions for the country. So it's about 40 million people in the rural regions. But yeah, I think Bernice can share a little bit more about that.
Thank you, Ivy and Benji. So regarding rural, I personally haven't been to the rural during this COVID era, but I do know people who are there, and I do know people who have been there. And there are two approaches to it. Some of them are just taking life as usual. You know, we're stocking, you know, agriculture or whatever work they're doing. They're continuing life as usual. They're not wearing masks. They're not really taking precautions. And it's also because of the stigma, you know, that's there. You know, once it was announced that, you know, Corona has decreased, people just kind of took it lightly. So it's like, oh, it's no more. It's kind of been like very casual. But I do know that people here in Dar who have moved to Dar to work or like look for better opportunities to send money home to the regions, some of them have lost their jobs. So people in the hospitality industry lost their jobs. Like these hotels have downsized majorly, 80% of their staff. People have been fighting with, for their rights and things like that. So people are also going through stress on how to get money, or, some of them have had to move back home because their families are telling them, you're better off helping us here in the village than struggling in Dar es Salaam, paying rent, and you don't have any money, you're jobless. So some of them have moved home to their regions to help out their families and their small business, to help them out until Corona ends. So career-wise, there has been a shift. Regarding the Masks for Hope campaign, so I've been on the ground, going to these urban rural informal sector areas. We've gone to street vendors, markets, these small where they sell charcoal, they cook food on charcoal on the roadside. These mothers with the little kids, we call it mama lishe. They barely make $2 a day. And we're giving them and we're educating them on masks. We made reusable masks with the CDC requirements so that they can wash and rewear it. And they're really good, breathable cotton material. And when we go on the ground and we explain to them, they're so grateful. And they're like, hey, we want more. We want to send to our families. We want to send it to, can you send it to the villages? Can you give us more? We want to send it all the way to our villages where we came from. And it's definitely a community thing that they're wanting. And when we ask, how come you're not wearing? They're like, we don't have money. We can't afford to buy these masks. We can barely afford money to bring home because, there's not been a lot of people going out to the marketplaces. People have reduced going to the market. There's now been a change in online delivery, for people in the mid to upper class. They're just buying things online, groceries and things. People are not wanting to go to those high risk areas. So when we go to them, they're very grateful. We've even had people fight over masks, just literally just come and grab, and we're like, hey, 1 meter, and so there is a need for it. And then we engage the local government authorities. So they're coming with us and pointing to us who needs it. So then there's that, credibility aspect of protection.
Thank you, Bernice. I see that Linus has had their hand up. If you have a question, Linus, and then Gemma. After that, I see you posted a question in the chat. But Linus, if you want to unmute yourself. Linus.
Let's just go ahead to Gemma then, Ivy. Gemma, did you want to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yes, the question goes to Benjamin. So I suppose you have the recovery plan?
Gemma, it's a little hard. I'm sorry, it's a little hard to hear you.
Wow. Is it better now?
A little bit. Maybe it's better. Ivy, do you want to just ask the question because she posted in the chat? Yeah, maybe just go ahead. Sorry, Gemma.
Yeah, so to Benjamin, Gemma asked, did you have or recently draft up business continuity plan? If yes, what are the main challenges and differences versus such a plan for small businesses in the US market?
Yeah, so I mean, we did, but it's evolving, right? It evolves the more we're starting to learn about the market. So for example, for us, you would think that during this time, so we do electronic payments, you would think that all electronic payments would all of a sudden shoot up and increase, but it hasn't really. And so that was also surprising for us a little bit. It's been like pretty flat line and like slight growth here and there. And so like, even if we look at our graphs over the last 2 months of data, we haven't seen like much differences in the volumes being transacted. I was talking to the CEO of one of the large telecoms here, and telecoms are how like the mobile money networks are run. So basically telecoms run banking in many African countries. And he was telling me that volumes have decreased on their end. So I think it decreases or adjusts based on like definitely income level and demographic of who the people are. So the business continuity plan, yes, we have one, but it's evolving, right? So it's, as the market's changing, we're trying to change that and adjust it, especially with new rules in place. And then for such a plan for the business in the US, you know, I've been monitoring the US quite a bit. I went to grad school there. I, you know, undergrad there as well, worked in the US as well. So I feel partly American to some aspect. You know, I think, you know, unemployment's the highest it's ever been, you know, and what I think is going to happen, not unfortunately, is while there's a global recession, I think there's also going to be a global depression, is my theory, because I think no one in our lifetime or, you know, has ever experienced something like this before. And I think that mental recapping and readjusting to post-COVID is going to take places like the US a little bit of time to adjust. So that's my theory. I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. But I actually think that's what's going to happen over the next, you know, 1 to 2 years.
Thank you. Dan Lax, yeah, it looks like you have a question or something you want to say.
Yeah. Thanks. First, for my question, I want to say it's great to see Benji and Bernice, and you guys put together an incredible trip for us, and really just amazing from all sides, from the urban things in Dar to the you know, the major corporations and the former first lady, right? You know, to the highlight for me really was going to that village on that island off of Zanzibar too, which was, you know, just all those amazing things. So thanks for really an incredible job. But my question is, I've heard some about possible impacts of COVID, you know, the response and kind of people not going out on future health things like, say, children's vaccinations, and that you know, it could be causing problems, you know, maybe bigger problems in the future in that regard. Any thoughts on that, or heard about that?
Yeah, Bernice, do you want to share a little bit, or should I just jump in? I didn't hear you, but I'm guessing you said go ahead. Cool. So yeah, essentially with vaccinations, it's a hard one. Yeah. So, you know, there's a lot of fake news going around in all these WhatsApp groups. So WhatsApp is the primary source of where people get news from in Tanzania and most African countries. And it's unfortunate because I wish there was like an internal filter where WhatsApp could like flag for fake news or something like that. But, you know, it's such a hard trade-off because like chat apps are trying to promote encryption and security. And so like if they can flag fake news, then it technically means they're reading your messages. So there's all this debate on like how tech companies adjust to this. But, you know, it has been unfortunate because, you know, there are a lot of rumors about vaccinations and anti-vaccines going on around, and like there's some true information. There's also a lot of false information and a lot of assumptions. So, you know, I used to work for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and I see all these theories and conspiracy theories anti-Bill Gates, and, you know, Bill Gates is the one who caused Corona, and like you hear people like speak about this so confidently locally that you're like, you could almost believe the stories they tell you. And like I even found myself second guessing. I like texting some of my former colleagues, was like, yo, did that really happen? And just trying to make sure I'm like, yeah, we're good, right? But I think that's the challenge with a lot of these things is there's, because of these rumors that are created, many people are like, oh, I'm anti-vaccines, or vaccines want to control us human beings. And it's just like there's even theories where people are saying, oh, America's trying to control the world. That's why they're trying to launch this new vaccine, that where they can like control people's brains and how people think, and that way we control. So like you hear these things, and unfortunately, because there is no self-correcting mechanism, people believe them. And people read what they believe on WhatsApp, and that's unfortunate. So regarding vaccines, there is a negative sentiment towards vaccines here in the market, and not just in Tanzania, but in many African countries. So people are like, no, I'm not taking that vaccine, even if it comes.
So I was thinking also just people wanting to avoid crowds and going out unnecessarily. Like for example, I didn't go to my dental cleaning that came up. I think dentist offices have been closed for, unless, except for emergencies. And so things that seem, that maybe it's best to not, stay farther away from other people. If something's not absolutely necessary, then you do that. So I heard that maybe vaccines, even parents that would want to vaccinate their kids might be thinking it's best not to go out into a crowded place to get this. Has that
Yeah,
happened?
I'm not even sure. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I'm done. Thanks.
I'm not even sure if that's even a thing here, because like churches are still open, so are mosques. And obviously, like, while population there have decreased, not like this last Sunday was like there was an increase, and like those are like the largest crowd like in the last like month. So so it's not as much of a concern over here. Again, I think it's because of the sentiment publicly of how things have been communicated. And then when one African government starts seeing other African governments open up, then that news gets spread there locally. And so people are like, oh yeah, it's just like a regular like cough and thing, and I'm just gonna get over it if I get it. Cool. And so I think because of that, the mentality about the virus, even myself, I found myself questioning like, okay, if no one's wearing a mask, should I still wear a mask? Yeah, obviously I am, but it really got me questioning that when you'd go to a place and like no one there is wearing a mask, and even like 2 weeks ago, everybody there was wearing a mask. So, and then people start teasing each other. So like when you're the only one wearing a mask, people start laughing at you like, oh dude, like that guy's weird or whatever. And so like there's a lot of sentiments both ways, and it's hard. It's hard. And Bernice has been more in the market going around, so maybe she has some comments here.
Thank you. So regarding vaccines, actually, Tanzania just received medicine from Madagascar, like herbal medicine from their land. And so they're going to be testing it out. I'm not really sure who they're testing it out on, but they're going to be testing it out. I think the idea is we can solve our own problems. That's what we're getting from the Tanzanian perspective is, hey, let's look at our own African type of medicine. And so we're not sure, we haven't heard feedback about the medicine from Madagascar, but we saw it on the news that Madagascar had already sent a whole a cargo full of medicine for us to try out. Regarding people going out, you spoke about the dental clinic and stuff like that. So right now, a lot of students like are preparing to go back to school, like the grade 12 and the university. So the parents are stocking up on masks and sanitizers for them. They're even stitching masks with their kids' names on it. If it's like Bernice or something, because when they're boarding school, you don't know whose mask it is. People could take it and things like that. So they're stocking up on masks. They're stocking up on things to take care of their kids because they don't know. And the government hasn't opened up schools yet because they still want to observe Corona. So it's not that Corona is over. They're still being cautious because you can't really control little kids. But people are still taking precaution. I was at a government office this morning, basically the IRS for Tanzania, and they were very strict. You could not get in if you didn't have a mask. Like one lady yelled at a guy because he didn't have a mask. He had like a little bandana and he was kicked out of the office. So thankfully I had masks on me. So I went and I gave him a mask because I felt bad, so I gave him a mask so he could get in. But like, they're checking temperature, they're having social distancing in lines, even in the chairs. It's 1 meter apart, the normal. But I was really impressed. I was honestly really impressed, since the government had advertised like, hey, Corona has reduced, but still in the government offices, they're still taking precaution, at least in that one experience that I had this morning, that people are really observing the protocol that it is there. And all the government staff, whatever institution, they all have the surgical masks. They're providing surgical masks for every government staff, police, government official, whatever government office, they're still providing that. So that gives me hope that, okay, we do know that it's still around and the government is the example to the rest of the people. So, if the government is not taking precaution, then the rest of the people, they're not going to want to take precaution. But because they're having those standards, it's encouraging to know that they're setting the standard and people should follow as well. But when you go to the normal streets and things, there are many people that are just casual. Like on Sunday, because it was a Eid holiday, people went to the beach and they were like enjoying and rejoicing. It was crowded. And so because they had announced that, you can celebrate, we're opening things up. So people took it literally opening things up, but there are still people taking precautions. So right now we don't know, there's part of the population that's really precautious. And then there's another part of the population that's like thinking that it's over, but it really isn't over.
Thank you for sharing. Lynn, I saw that you asked a question. If you want to ask here for everyone to hear.
Sure. Thank you, Benji and Bernice. I'm curious if you have a moment to talk a little bit more about the 2018 trip. And mostly I'm curious as how you chose the village that you partnered the CASE team up with, and if there's still connections with the people in that community. Thank you.
Yeah. I'll let Bernice answer more because she like planned everything and did everything. But the short form of it was I started hosting trips for like my grad school to Tanzania since 2015. Started off as a joke. I like a Facebook post in our class group saying, who wants to, I'm from Tanzania, and like the last person to go to my grad school from Tanzania was 2005. So I was like, hey, because I knew nobody in the current class was from Tanzania. So I was like, what's up, everybody? Who's trying to climb Mount Kilimanjaro this summer? LOL. And then literally like a few minutes later, like we had 88 people say they wanted to climb, and out of 400 people. And I was like, oh crap, now I actually have to plan this. And I've never climbed the mountain myself either. So I was like, oh shoot, now I have to like actually do this, or I'm gonna look like a big flake in front of my classmates I haven't met yet. So that's how the trip started. So I started doing that trip in 2015, and like just got a bunch of people, and then it wanted to continue. So the first summer we had about 30 people. And then when those people came back, we did Kilimanjaro, Safari, and Zanzibar. But one thing that I always kept asking them is like, hey, and after they would go through the trip, we would talk about different aspects of like tourism or some of the challenges and the villages around them and how tourism impacts them and what we could do to help, and wanted to always figure out what else we could do that's going to be even more valuable for that. So one of the challenges we were always asking myself, Bernice and I, were like, okay, do we just want people to come here for tourism, or can we do something with them that's pretty cool on the ground? And it was definitely hard because some groups just want to come for tourism, but then others want to, like with Harvard Business School, when we hosted them, we did meetings with them here locally, and coordinated that. Bernice led that, and they like met Mohamed Dewji, who's like the wealthiest man in East Africa, one of the wealthiest men in Tanzania. And yeah, so one of the wealthiest men in Africa. So that's kind of like how it came about. So then like when Michael had reached out, we were connected. I was like, okay, let's do something like really, really cool, and be able to really create an impact during our time there. So when the whole team came down, Bernice had coordinated, we had seen this island called Timbuktu, and no one really goes there at all. And, she had coordinated, and it was really hard to even get there. And there were things like going on 2 different boats just to like hop onto this island, and things that probably schools wouldn't approve if they knew. but yeah, I think we had to just like to Africa, like we had to figure it out. So I think Bernice helped coordinate that, and then with them. So the island basically that we went to, there's a video that's probably, I don't know if you've seen it yet, but I'll post the link here. I think it's got over 100,000 views. But we went to this island, and basically they don't have electricity, no running water. Phone service was extremely limited, and only in one part of the island. But that's been there for hundreds of years, and people have lived there since the Shirazi Empire from Iran, they said in the 5th century. And I didn't know that, and I'm Tanzanian, and I've lived here my whole life. And so that whole experience of going out there was fascinating for me to see. we have kept in touch with one of the people who goes back and forth on the island, you know, and it's a little bit hard because it's so hard to get there. So you have to just trust their take on, you know, what they say. So pieces have started to develop a little bit. They have a few more solar panels now there on the island. Still no electricity formally, but yeah, I'll allow Bernice to share a little bit more about that because that was more of her work pulling it together.
I think you've covered it all. Basically, the request was to really go to somewhere really, really rural and somewhere where people haven't been to. You know, instead of going to the main Zanzibar island, you know, a small little village, it was, hey, let's go to somewhere really, and I think Professor Lax was really excited and passionate about it. He's like, no, I really want to go to somewhere nobody has been to. And it was like, okay, like let's look for that. And we did research on Tumbatu, and personally, I was discovering Tumbatu myself because it's like a 99% Muslim area, very strict. Like the men had to wear long pants, covered their legs, including the men. You know, they had to cover themselves, and the women had to cover our heads and everything. And it was like a lot of strict protocol. And the kids, when we were with there, the kids hadn't eaten the whole day. And so we had like a little like baobab seeds, and we just I had picked it up for the team, you know, for us to snack, but seeing that the kids hadn't eaten anything while the engineering team mostly, you know, was up on the, you know, putting up solar panels, we gave it to them. And so, yeah, a lot of them hadn't seen Americans or any Caucasian person before because it's just an island that nobody goes to. They were actually surprised, like where are these people from? They had no idea. So it was definitely an amazing experience being with them for the whole day and setting up the solar panels and then heading back. It was definitely an incredible trip, and we welcome you guys back to Tanzania. Happy to do something similar, or, you know, go back to the same place or another place because there is a need.
Awesome, thank you. We're running low on time. Julia, I see you asked a question. So if you want to ask that real quick, Benji and Bernice can speak to that, and then we'll wrap things up here soon.
Sure, thanks, Ivy. I was just curious about your inspiration for pursuing your business and like how you started with entrepreneurship. What kind of drove you to do that? Kind of shifting from what we've been talking about. But.
Yeah, aspirationally, I would love to build a bank. You know, and that's where we'd love to go is I want to build a Pan-African digital bank, and that's what we'd like to do with our team. It's really hard. There's a lot of regulation and challenges in every single market we operate in and look to operate in, and it's tough. You know, we get hard times from governments who don't understand how technology works and, you know, try to over-regulate, you know, and we've got our fair share of letters and threats here and there, and it's hard. But want to change that because I think the tech industry is still so nascent and early on on the African continent. You know, last year was our biggest year yet. Last year the African continent received over $1 billion in funding for tech companies. You know, and with 1.3 billion people, there's massive opportunities in the tech industry on the continent. So that's what we'd love to do. I personally would love to do. I mean, it's a long way to get there. I think we're only 2% done, is what I tell my team. And so, and the why piece is more important for me. I don't believe that the lowest income region in the world should get charged the most amount for fees. And I don't believe the model of like a lot of large entities globally controlling how financial services need to be run on the continent. And I just want to make an effort in trying to change that. And should we be successful, great, but I want to just give it my best shot.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Benji, Bernice, do you want to speak to your inspiration, or we are getting low on time? I see a lot of questions in the chat. Do have to wrap it up soon, but Bernice?
Okay, so really quickly, I have been really passionate about teaching and education, and I see that there's a huge gap in knowledge here in Tanzania, and my life mantra is to whom much is given, much is required. I was the first one in my family to get an education and the first one to earn a master's in my family, and I don't take that for granted. And so I decided, hey, I want to go back and help people learn more, teach them, give them tools, different skills. That there's a huge gap, and you don't realize it until you're on the ground and you're seeing it. And I had always had this tutoring, teaching background, speaking, and just kind of solving problems, because I did consulting work in the US as well. And so that's why I got into it. And I had been doing it even before I moved back to Tanzania, and I discovered, hey, and that was something that people were coming to me for. So that's a little bit of why I got into this.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. As we are getting low on time, I see some questions in the chat. Maybe we can reach out via email to Benji, Bernice. Feel free to reach out to me, or LinkedIn, I think are linked on the call. I just wanted to say Peace Corps Tanzania was like probably the best decision I've ever made. It was such an incredible experience. The culture, the people, it's so beautiful and amazing. So if anyone can ever, people on the States on this call, make it out to Tanzania. If we do a follow-up trip, Professor Lax, Professor Goldberg, that'd be incredible. If anyone has any questions about like Peace Corps or that experience, please feel free to reach out to me. And Michael, I think I'll throw it back to you.
Great. Well, thank you, Ivy, for moderating, and thanks for your contribution in the Peace Corps. It really is a wonderful program. I know we sent alums from the university, including faculty like Lynn's husband, Andrew, and Elliot Posner, who's a professor of political sciences, a number of folks that have participated in Peace Corps, and it's a really wonderful way, once we get back to traveling again, to get to know a community and give back. Benji and Bernice, thank you for joining us today. And as we said in the beginning, this is a bit of a reunion for those who got to spend time with you. I mean, you opened up your Rolodexes and contacts, and without being too cheesy, sort of your hearts to us during the visit. And you really, I think, showed our group a wonderful side of Tanzania. We do all look forward to get back. I know Lynn Rollins is on the call with a number of students in the engineering side, are doing some really amazing work on the continent of Africa and some other places. So, we are fully committed to being back and bringing students and engaging. And I know there's a number of folks from Tanzania who are on this call, so thank you all for joining. I know we didn't have a lot of time to get some of the voices here, but hopefully you enjoyed the conversation, and look forward to finding ways to engage with you. So just a quick announcement: tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern time. So I guess that is, what's the time difference in dollars? 7 hours?
It's 5 p.m. now here.
Okay, so 1 p.m. us, 8 hours, 8 p.m. in Dar. We're gonna have a great speaker tomorrow named Sarah Morgenstern. Sarah is with Flourish Ventures. Actually, Benji, you're probably familiar with Omidyar Network. Do you have investment from Omidyar?
Not Omidyar, but some of their partners, yeah. Okay. Like people they work with, yeah.
So Sarah is a Clevelander who worked at McKinsey and then Omidyar and is now with Flourish. So we're gonna continue this theme of impact investing, and that's tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern as part of our series. So again, thank you everybody for joining. Ivy, thanks for moderating. And Benji and Bernice, it's awesome to see you. And thanks for everything you're doing for folks in Tanzania and around the world.
Awesome. Really cool. And if there's any other questions, feel free to shoot Bernice or myself an email, or if anybody in Tanzania wants to help out with the campaign Bernice is doing, feel free to reach out to her as well.
Right.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you, Bernice.
Thank you so much.
Asante Sana.
Have a wonderful day. Stay safe.
Thanks, everybody.